You're listening to
They're going to call it a hard foul. They're going to call it a hard foul.
offering in-depth analysis on all things Boston Celtics with your hosts, Jim and Mike Quigley.
Mike, we got basketball today. Basketball,
Yes.
12 o'clock in Abu Dhabi.
Where is it?
Abu Dhabi, Saudi
Is
Arabia.
that the Saudi Arabia? Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, man. All right. Hope everybody. No, I'm not going to say anything. All right.
yeah, 12 o'clock against the Nuggets.
Why are we sending people?
At least a good team to kind of open up against and has some entertainment value. But if you work and you live in America, you probably don't get to watch it because it's 12 o'clock our time that it starts. And then they play.
Is there a second game against the Nuggets over there, too?
Yeah, and so that's Sunday. It's 10 a.m., which I kind of like for a preseason game to wake up, do some stuff around the house and maybe have a cup of coffee and have that on in the background. So Sunday, 10 a.m. doesn't bother me. Today at noon, a little more difficult to kind of sit back and watch. I think for most people, maybe not for everybody, but for most people.
Don't you work at home?
I work at home, but I'm actually working. I can't sit there and watch a game.
People who work at home don't really work.
Okay.
They just get paid. They don't work. I
That's
have so many
right.
friends who are like working from home and they're like, yeah, man, I wake up
That's
when
why-
I want to. I work out during the day. It's great. It's all this freedom. Like, you don't really work. That's not work.
In case my clients are listening, I'm working.
I didn't say my brother. I said my friends. We
Um,
don't love each other enough to talk about our lives. The only time we interact with each other is on this show.
It's absolutely true. And we actually have a little bit. There was major breaking news last week, and we're late to this with this pod, but it happened after our last pod that we had. Karl-Anthony Towns traded over the Knicks. I'm sure everyone's aware. Julius Randle, and Dante DiVincenzo is going over.
Did you see their press conference in Minnesota?
No, were they just like down in the dumps?
It reminded me of when like Keith Bogans got traded to the Celtics. Remember that press conference? Like Chris Humphries? They just looked miserable.
And it's great.
I get it because you moved from New York City to Minnesota, but like basketball wise, you're still in a pretty good situation. You're still
you can make some arguments better.
maybe.
You
Maybe I
really
don't know.
could.
I mean, both teams are really good. Yeah. So
Yeah, it's close, but there is an argument to be made that it could be better, especially long term because of who their superstar is.
but I can get it though, like playing, especially being DiVincenzo. I mean, Randle was hurt last year. But
Yeah.
to experience what he experienced during that playoff run and to be shipped off to Minnesota, which Minnesota has great fans, but I'm just talking about.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know a lot about New York City, but it's probably a lot better to live there when you have a lot of money than Minnesota.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it seemed like Karl-Anthony Towns was shocked as well, from everything.
Well, he wasn't even. Yeah.
Like this was unexpected. He had thought he had become the staple there, and he spent his whole career there. He finally won last year, and then out the door he goes, and for what seems to be not really basketball reasons.
Oh, it's not basketball. I mean, it's just not. And I feel bad for Timberwolves fans because I don't think Julius Randle's going to be there after this season. I think this is their window, right? Like to win the championship with their, I guess, big three, because they're not going to be able to afford to keep him, right?
I wonder if they move him like this season, in season, and get better fits for around Anthony Edwards, because they're still a good team. They're still a good team. They're still a good defensive team. You can make arguments in some ways, depending on what they do with Randle, or if, how they use him, or if they're able to move him for other parts, that maybe this is even turns out to be a good move for Anthony Edwards and the Timberwolves. even if it doesn't look
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
on paper.
I'd like to at least see it. I mean,
Yeah,
Randle was a 25-point a game scorer with the Knicks last year. And I know the year prior to last, he wasn't very good, but that playoff run 2 years ago, he was really good. So
all NBA. Yeah,
yeah, he's had really good. I think it's always been defensive deficiencies, but now I'm hearing that Karl-Anthony Towns, which I'm not going to pretend like I even knew. I just assumed he was good defensively, but I'm
he's
hearing he's
not.
not a good defensive
No,
player. So,
no, he's
um,
not. And he's played on the Tibbs before. So let's, you know, what's your thoughts for the Knicks?
related to the Celtics, right? Yeah.
Well, just overall, and then we can get right into the how it relates to the Celtics. But overall, your initial thoughts on the move for the Knicks?
I mean, I think it was a good move because they were going to play Mitchell Robinson at center, who
Mhm.
outside of Joel Embiid really doesn't defend anybody in the NBA, and he doesn't give you a ton offensively. And so I just feel like they have a lineup now where they can play their four wings, who are probably their strongest assets, three wings with Brunson, their strongest assets defensively. And they have a guy who prior to Rudy Gobert going to Minnesota was a 26-point a game scorer, really efficient. And I do feel like that 2-game pick and roll with Brunson could be deadly where, you know, Randle was a great scorer, but it was more of like slow the offense down, let this guy, create ISO, non-efficient 3-point scorer where Towns is like a real better version of Al Horford. He's a really good 3-point on the offensive end, a really good 3-point shooter. And maybe the Knicks lost something defensively, obviously, because Mitchell Robinson will be coming off the bench, but I think offensively they're pretty scary as a healthy unit with Bridges, Brunson, and Towns out there, because Towns can beat you up inside, and he certainly can kill you from three. He can get really hot from three, and that's going to create space for these guys. Where Randle would really slow the game down and kind of muck things up. I do think it was a good move for the Knicks. I do. Now, the one thing I'll say, Jim, is I feel like the Knicks and the Celtics are in a similar situation where if you're chasing the championship, you better win now, because I don't know if they're able to keep this team together next offseason when the tax bill hits. That's what I want to see. Like, Towns is locked up for a long time. It's a ton of money that they're throwing at these guys, and can these owners actually afford this? So I don't know. I think like the Knicks are in a win now mode. Like, they better win now, because I don't think they're able to keep this together. I don't think there's an owner out there that wants to pay the amount of money that they're going to have to pay.
Yeah, they're probably even more win now because they haven't been in a conference finals in 20 years. I do think their window's probably slightly ajar, open more than the Celtics right now, because I don't think their tax bill is what the Celtics are.
Mhm.
And maybe they could bite off another season here. And maybe that's kind of the hope that, even if you don't get it this year, the Celtics are going to have to break it up, and you're going to be sitting right there to reap the benefits of that. Perhaps I kind of think maybe that's part of the thinking. Yeah, Karl-Anthony Towns, a really good offensive player. I think he's like a 40% career 3-point shooter. So like you're right, just in terms of being an effective scorer at all levels, he can do that. I think sometimes he settles too much for him out of the 3-point line. But
Check it.
yeah, but on the whole, you definitely an upgrade. Really good defensive rebounder, really good offensive rebounder, pretty good passer, all those things. He'll create problems for teams, even the Celtics, when they go 5 out, if he's on his game. Now, part of his problem is when he's not shooting the 3-point well, he lets it affect everything. And you saw that in the playoffs last year, particularly in the conference finals against the Mavericks. He was a non-factor, and he was actually on the bench a couple times at the end of games in favor of Naz Reid. who, that's the interesting part of the equation for the Timberwolves is, that guy's going to be able to play a lot more now. And, he's a lot better than just being a bench player that he has been for the Timberwolves for the past couple of seasons. I mean, now it's Reed. But
Yeah.
Towns, he at times has just completely disappeared in the playoffs and has been an effective player. I mean, he was good, really good at times against the Nuggets, and their losses just kind of disappeared. And he's not a two-way player. So
How old is
that's
he?
what the Knicks. Go ahead, Mike.
How old is he?
He's got to be around 30, right? He's been there a long time now. He is. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but maybe late 20s, somewhere 29. He's 29.
Okay.
So
Yeah, so I don't get anymore.
yeah, so he's right in what should be the prime of his career. So I guess the thought would be, well, Thibodeau and this Knicks team is going to raise his defensive level up. That's entirely possible. But he's played under Tibbs with Jimmy Butler, with other defensive-minded teams, and they were ranked like 27th and 28th in the NBA in defense, and he was the guy that teams would target.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if Tibbs. Wow, I forgot Tibbs coached him already.
So and this is, I would tell Celtics fans to go back if you can and watch the overtime win against the Timberwolves last year and watch how effectively the Celtics hunted Karl-Anthony Towns in the fourth quarter in overtime and just went right after him, particularly with Jason Tatum. And that was a game where Tatum kind of went off late. And so it's not the best example because Tatum was going so great, but they hunted him. And so that's how teams around the league kind of view him defensively. They view him as a guy they can take advantage of and go after. So that's, they are way better at the offensive side of the center position going into the next season than they were last. I still think they're a significant step backwards defensively, especially as compared to Isaiah Hartenstein.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, but I think it was a move to make. Teams are trying to kind of match up and copy the Celtics, who play this 5-out offense. But I think what people are missing, especially when they evaluate these two teams, I saw Bobby Mark say this is the best starting five in the NBA. I've heard other people really say this is the Knicks taking the step. The Celtics are not only great offensively with their starting five, defensively, they can basically switch off of anybody. And as you get into a matchup between these two teams, if they meet in the playoffs, and there's no guarantee of that ever, but if they meet in the playoffs, what the Celtics can do that the Knicks can't really do is they can target two players in the starting offense right now. Jalen and the two best offensive players, and Brunson and Towns, the Celtics will go right after. And those two guys don't really have an answer to defend anyone in the Celtics starting five, not just Tatum or Brown, but anyone can really go after these guys because of the size of the guards, the speed, the quickness, the shooting ability of everybody in that starting five. It will create problems. And, I think there'll be a lot of talk about Anunoby and Bridges matching up against Brown and Tatum. You can start there. But as we saw against Denver and other teams, Brown and Tatum go after who they want. And the Celtics are very creative. And I don't think there's a better team in the league of getting the matchups they want and attacking them. On the flip side, Brunson and Towns will definitely give the Celtics drop coverage headaches. In a playoff series, and their offensive rebounding ability will cause problems for the Celtics in a playoff series. And there'll be a tough out. There'll be no doubt about it. But how much this actually closes the gap between the two teams, I'm not sure. I still think the Celtics are the perennial favorites in a series versus them. I think they would, think it'd be a tough series. I could easily see it going to 7, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was a little bit shorter than that too. I just still think the Knicks aren't quite on the class of the Celtics, and I think it mostly has to do with the versatility and the two-way playing ability of the Celtics starting five, and they just got a better bench too.
Yeah, well, that's if you manage Al Horford correctly, which is going to be really important. So he's available come playoff time because we just don't know what it's going to look like with Kristaps Porzingis. But speaking of Karl-Anthony Towns, and if I was a Knicks fan, my overall concern with them going into this is let me read you these last 5 seasons games played: 35, 50. Then he had 74, which is good. Then 29 and 62.
Yeah, inconsistent, right?
That seems like a guy who misses a lot of basketball. And you already have Anunoby coming off injuries. You have
Brunson's a
Bridges.
small god.
Yeah. So, and the amount of minutes that Josh Hart had to play in the playoffs last year, coming off that. So that is something that we've been really lucky with the Celtics. Is obviously those guys are in shape and they play. I do expect maybe Holiday and Al Horford to have less games played this year than last year, but
hopefully by
the
design.
rest, yeah, probably by design. But these guys play in Boston, and I look at it like when we meet in the playoff series, I'm saying, yeah, if Al Horford and Kristaps is available, but who's going to be available in New York? Who's going to be available to play? Let's see.
That's the epidemic around the league. It's you just have games played, and it's affecting so many teams, so many talented groups, and everyone loves Tibbs, and I like him too. But there is a history of his teams breaking down come playoff time too, where he asks so much of these guys, and they are not deep. Their bench isn't very good going into the season, so he's going to lean on his starting five a lot during this regular season. And so what does that mean? Brunson broke down last year in the conference semifinals. And this could be me being Scott as a Celtics fan with small guards, but we've seen what happens with small guards. We saw it with Isaiah Thomas. We saw it with
Kemba
Walker. Yeah, Kemba Walker. These guys just fall off a cliff. They just fall off a cliff, and the window is small. So I think that they look at their age of the starting five, and I think maybe that's part of the reason of bringing Karl-Anthony Towns to extend this window, because in case, the Brunson thing starts to deteriorate, which it could. I'm not saying it will, but it could. But usually when that thing starts to deteriorate with guys built like him, it happens fast. And so that's the other thing, and
he's such
they
a
brought
physical
him down
player.
last year quite a bit.
Yeah, he's such a physical player the way he plays too. I mean, I hope that doesn't happen. I actually like watching that. I actually like watching the Knicks. I do. I like watching them. And I don't actually think they're a threat to the Celtics. So I don't care if they stay healthy and they're competitive.
So, they're a threat.
Yeah.
If the Celtics. You mentioned Porzingis isn't there, and all of a sudden they can't rebound the ball. They can't get the defensive rebound, and the Knicks are an excellent offensive rebounding team, and they get an extra possessions. I mean, we saw it in 2010 where the Celtics almost did everything right defensively against the Lakers throughout the series, and they couldn't close them out because they couldn't rebound the ball. And they outplayed the Lakers. The majority of that series
in Game 7,
particularly Game 7. Yeah.
Well, Game 6 they didn't show up.
Yeah, and they just couldn't rebound the ball, and so
and also it was like Doc Rivers' offense. I mean, they scored I don't think they scored 90 points 3 straight games.
Yeah, well, there's that too. Yeah. But this team,
they have all that talent. You can't score 90 points.
Yeah,
that's fucking crazy.
And I don't think that would happen versus Celtics, but I think that's how the Knicks would win. It would be attacking that pick and roll, getting into close games the last 2 minutes, and thinking you have an advantage because that's Jalen Brunson's. He performs at his best during those moments, and you're staying in it with extra possessions. But I think for the most part, Mike, you're absolutely right.
Why did you bring up 2010?
Just the rebounding thing got me thinking about it. So.
Paul Gasol should have been the MVP of that series.
He
And
should have.
I love Kobe Bryant, but Paul Gasol,
Kobe Bryant was
like,
borderline
wasn't
non-factor.
that he wasn't very efficient. I think in
No,
Game 7, wasn't he like 7 for 23 or something?
borderline non-factor in Game 7.
And then
Yeah.
if the Celtics won, it probably would have been Ray Allen, right?
It was
Wasn't he great?
Ron Artest was hitting the big shots, if you remember, in Game 7. Yeah.
Oh, well, Derek Fisher pulled one out of his ass.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Yeah, he did. That was a killer.
Yeah.
That was a fucking killer. Oh, God. Yeah, but Paul Gasol was just murdering Garnett on the boards. I mean, it was, man, because Gasol in '08 was just such a pussy. Remember how, like, it was just so obvious, and I didn't see that coming. I always thought he was going to be a big pussy.
Yeah, and Garnett in 2010 because of his knee issues wasn't what he was in 2008.
No, he wasn't. No, he was not. He sure wasn't.
He was still very good, but he wasn't that. Mike, so we talk about, I just talked a little bit of if the Knicks were to win, how they would do it. If you were let's go over a couple of other Eastern Conference contenders. How do the Philadelphia 76ers, if they were to win and beat the Celtics, both teams being healthy, what would it look like?
Joel Embiid being in shape and available and not talking about injuries. Joel Embiid being in shape.
Yeah.
Then we don't even have to talk about basketball. Philly's got a shot. They got a shot against anybody. If Joel Embiid is the all-world player in the fourth quarter against the Boston Celtics, they can win. And the Celtics can beat them, obviously, too, even with him all-world. But I've never seen Joel Embiid in a playoff series against the Celtics in the fourth quarter as in shape. So there you go. That's my answer.
All right, and in any big series for him, it feels like he's not available in the fourth quarter. And I think that's pretty much it. And honestly, if he was ever in shape, the playoffs
probably have a ring by now.
Your playoffs are all about matchups, and that's what I think the problem is for the Knicks versus Celtics. I just don't think they match up well, even though everyone in the media is going to tell you otherwise. I'm telling you right now, they don't, because the Celtics can just go after a couple of their guys. The Knicks, could run a 3-5 pick and roll between Embiid and Paul George and just really create major problems for the Celtics. The Celtics were able to start Jason Tatum on the Maverick centers. That isn't an option against Embiid. He'll be in a foul trouble within the first 3 minutes of the game if they ever try to do that. If they were ever able to be on the floor, be in shape, be healthy, they do create some real problems. One of the two teams in the league, the other one being the Nuggets, I think, can create some real matchup problems for the Celtics that the Celtics don't have great answers for. Despite their ability to switch, despite having 5 defensive versatile players, I imagine you'd see a lot of Tillman, a lot of Horford being thrown at Embiid.
Yeah, but
A lot of
Embiid's
doubling and scrambling, but it would be tough.
Embiid's got to be willing in those moments to pass the ball, too. And I think that's part of the problem, too, is that there'll be double teams thrown at him, and he's still dribbling off his knee and passing the ball out of the bounds and flailing his body into people. He's got to change the way he plays if he ever wants to beat the Celtics.
And willing to play.
He just has to. He has to.
And willing to play out of the pick and roll, which he just doesn't do a lot of. He does a lot of catching on the foul line, a lot of catching on the block. But you got to put the defense in more uncomfortable situations. They're uncomfortable because you're so great, but they're not really doing a whole hell of a lot. They can scramble, they can double. If he could become an effective pick and roll player with Paul George, especially in crunch time on Tyrese Maxey, it creates a whole world of problems for their opponents. A whole fucking world of problems. But he just doesn't do that. He's never done that consistently. I think.
I'm just Tim. I'm just walking out to my car, so I'm going to go on mute just for a second here.
I think the larger point of me bringing up the 76ers and the Knicks is I still feel the 76ers are if all things being equal, they're healthy. Joel Embiid has the ability to run. They're the team that's better suited to beat the Celtics in a playoff series than the Knicks. Mike, we're a couple hours away. Preseason's going to start. Any closing thoughts of just what from the Celtics perspective and what you saw from the practices or interviews or the type of shape that Jaylen Brown looks like he's going to be in? Like anything concerning or excited about or anything like that?
I was excited for basketball. All this preseason nonsense and all the shit from the offseason, it's over now. Let's just play. And I'm going to be disappointed because preseason basketball is always really disappointing. But I just want to say, Jim, I'm really looking forward to the Wizards this year. I think this is the year the Wizards could be good.
I can't even tell you who most of their starting five is. I really couldn't even tell you right now. I guess Kyle Kuzma, right?
The Wizards, yeah, man.
Yeah.
They paid like $50 million for 3 centers that all suck.
Yeah, they're going to be terrible.
They all defend like Karl-Anthony Towns, and they're as efficient as Marcus Smart on offense. So they're going to be great.
One surprise team that sucked last year that you think is going to be good. And we'll close with that.
Oh, the Rockets. I think the Rockets could. I mean, the West is obviously got a lot of teams, but I think the Rockets can make a jump this year. Maybe they jump the Clippers or something. But I think, or the Lakers. I think the Rockets have a shot to make the playoffs.
Yeah, mine would. Maybe this isn't really a surprise because what they've been in previous seasons, but the Grizzlies are going to be much better than what they were last year.
Yeah, they got killed with injuries.
Yeah, and you got to think that, Morant's going to be pretty motivated based on what he's had to deal with the last couple of seasons. So I think they're gonna be a factor out west. They're not even.
Yeah, and if that kid from Purdue, I mean, I know doesn't really fit into the modern game, but if he can be an efficient scorer for them, that changes a lot of things.
Yeah. No, I think they're going to be pretty good. I think obviously Vegas does too because it has their over under at 47.5, which is higher than it would be.
That's pretty high. Yeah.
All right. Hey, hope you get to watch the game today, Mike. Recording so you can watch it later tonight. If not, and we'll talk soon, right?
Yeah, I got to get my league pass so I can watch the Wizards.
All right. Yeah, get your league pass to watch the Wizards. All right. I'll talk.